We are going to talk about this and give you all the facts that we know right now. Boyd Tinsley of the Dave Matthews Band has been accused of sexual misconduct. I'm going to tell you everything that we know at this moment. Some of you who are on the story early may know a lot of the details. Well, we just got a statement from the Dave Matthews Band themselves, so we're going to touch on that as well. I know these things tend to be delicate, and believe me, we're going to deliver them in a way that's friendly for radio. But if you have somebody listening, a kid or whatever, we waited for this hour because most of the kids are in school. You may want to tune away and come back and check us out in a little bit. I just want to be as frank with that as possible. But this is a gigantic story in the world of music today. It's unfortunate that something like this has occurred. We're not going to assume anything. We're just going to tell you what we know at this very moment. To give you a little bit of a background on this, it's not the first time I've heard something like this about Boyd Tinsley a number of years ago, and this is kind of the facts of how this all came out. There's not a ton of people reporting on it, but essentially he had an assistant who wound up embezzling money from him. He fired that assistant. He then stopped that assistant from gaining other clients. I think Andy Roddick, the tennis player, was one of them. The assistant then sued Boyd, and Boyd sued the assistant. And one of those things in that case that came out was the fact that the assistant had said that he had been an abusive type of person. Now, I can say that the judge threw that part of the case out because on the grounds of what does that have to do with the money that was stolen and the relationship that was ruined, and so on and so forth. So that's all we had ever heard. That is the only thing I had ever heard prior to this moment right here. What we have right now is a young man by the name of James Frost-Winn who has come forward and accused Boyd Tinsley of sexual misconduct. He was in a band that Boyd started, a side project that he did outside of the Dave Matthews Band. We talked about this earlier on whether or not Boyd was going to return. Again, I will answer that going on the statement of what the Dave Matthews Band said. You hear something like this. I honestly took it tough. Like yesterday, I was like devastated because we all love music and we all have our faves. And, you know, Van Morrison, I love more than a lot of others. The Allman Brothers have a special place in my heart, and so do the Dave Matthews Band. So for me, this was tough to read by all accounts. But this is essentially what we know happened. James Frost-Winn left his home in Vegas in 2007. He went to San Francisco. He was homeless at the time that he had a first chance meeting with Boyd Tinsley at a cafe over there. Boyd Tinsley and him met. Boyd eventually bought Indian food and nice jackets for Frost-Winn and a fellow busker. They exchanged numbers and would meet up when Tinsley was in town, typical at his hotel room, where they would catch up, watch movies, and enjoy a little weed. Frost-Winn recalls, 3 times we hung out at his hotel. It was chill. He seemed like he was just a friend. Tinsley was very generous, buying dinner, car rides, several passes for Frost-Winn and his friends to the Outside Lands Music Festival in 2009, where Dave Matthews Band served as headliners. Tinsley texted Frost-Winn about hanging out after the event, but he said he didn't feel comfortable with Frost-Winn's friends coming along. The trumpeter declined. Tinsley allegedly followed with a text calling Frost-Winn sweet, tender, and innocent. Frost-Winn said, "It threw me off because he had just given me this nice gift of passes. I immediately responded saying I wanted to make sure he knew that I wasn't interested in him like that." He responded that sometimes people do good things, meaning Boyd responded, "Sometimes people do good things in return," and that made Frost-Winn feel guilty. He said, quote, "And I apologized. He said he wasn't trying to hit on me." That message was the first missive from Tinsley, who Frost-Winn would come to find was a prolific, often sexual texter. Tinsley did not respond to multiple requests for comments on this story. As the years went on, the two kept in contact. Frost-Winn continued to play trumpet in various Bay Area groups. He started doing production work for the Haight Street Festival. Tinsley would occasionally fly him out for concerts, booking seats for a show in Toronto. In the fall of 2014, Tinsley approached Frost-Winn about creating a band that would also be the subject of a documentary. Frost-Winn was curious, and after his mother died in July of 2014, joined Crystal Garden. Frost-Winn says, quote, at that point, we had been friends for like 8 years. We weren't always hanging out, but when he would come into town, he'd treat me well. It was cool. I knew this nice, down-to-earth celebrity guy. That's pretty crazy. So when he mentioned a project like this, who wouldn't want to do that? Boyd Tinsley told Jambase back in 2016, quote, I wanted to create a young rock band, not a pop band, but a real rock band that had the same sensibility that rock from the 60s and 70s had to it. Something rocking from the heart and expressing something real. He added that it took him several years to find the right musicians for this project, saying, quote, Frost-Winn played me some stuff that he recorded some years back in the studio, and there was some stuff in there that I really dug, particularly his approach to the music. So when I decided to do this band, James became the first person. When Tinsley suggested Frost-Winn move from San Francisco to Seattle to take Crystal Garden to the next level, Frost-Winn says, quote, it wasn't even much of a question. This is a golden ticket opportunity. Frost-Winn, with his bandmates, moved to Seattle, and Tinsley paid for everything, rent, groceries, and travel. Frost-Winn would perform with Crystal Garden in Charlottesville, Virginia, New York City, San Francisco, Providence, Rhode Island, and Indianapolis. Throughout this time of intense musical creation, touring, and success for Frost-Winn, the trumpeter says Tinsley started exhibiting strange behavior. During a stopover in New York in 2015, after spending 3 tour dates with DMB, Frost-Winn casually mentioned that he and some friends were going to watch the New England Patriots New York Giants game at a bar. Tinsley, as Frost-Winn explains, quote, immediately got 5 tickets. When he did it, he said, he sent him a very, very inappropriate text message about showing gratitude towards Boyd. Frost-Winn went on to say he thought it was maybe a funny joke or something, but it wasn't also 100% joking. During Frost-Winn's stint with DMB, he says Tinsley made a strange request before going on stage. He wanted a pair of socks. Frost-Winn said, quote, I went to grab a clean pair, but he said, no, I want the ones you're wearing. So I gave them to him. Frost-Winn adds that other musicians had confided that Tinsley had made the same request to them. Frost-Winn said, a couple of things like that had thrown me off, but he hadn't done anything aggressive, so I thought maybe he's a weird guy. It was definitely like that's not normal, but I didn't feel uncomfortable around him. During a recording session at Tinsley's Virginia recording house, Frost-Winn says Tinsley revealed a very dark side of himself he hadn't seen. Seemingly out of nowhere, Tinsley became frustrated when bassist Charlie Santos wasn't doing what Tinsley asked. Tinsley freaked out in seconds, grabbed his beautiful vintage guitar from the 50s or 60s, and smashed it to pieces. He threw stuff. It was frightening, Frost-Winn says. Tinsley accused the band of not taking the process seriously. Santos, who did not respond to a request for comment on this story, said Frost-Winn eventually calmed down Tinsley, and the recording session continued in the wee hours of the morning. As Frost-Winn fell asleep on the couch, Tinsley allegedly touched his legs, rubbed his back, and put his feet on his buttocks. It not only creeped me out, Frost-Winn said, but it also was really annoying because I was trying to sleep. Frost-Winn eventually dozed off. He said, quote, I don't know how long I was asleep for, but when I came to, Boyd was doing something inappropriate to himself while I was sleeping, and he had his hands on my body. I'm paraphrasing here a little bit to keep this clean for the radio. He was nearly finished when Frost-Winn freaked out and ran to another part of the house. Tinsley followed after him. Eventually, they came back to the studio. Frost-Winn says, quote, I sat there for hours. I was so freaked out, I felt assaulted. It was something I didn't expect from him. I was contemplating how to stay in the project. It's such a big opportunity, but my trust had been affected. Tinsley blamed the incident on a pill mix-up and said that he wasn't in his right mind. I believed him, Frost-Winn said. I knew he was on a few kinds of meds. I forgave him, but said it would take a while to begin trusting him again. Tinsley was reached and asked for, Tinsley has not confirmed to Consequence of Sound that this incident occurred. Consequence of Sound is the one who had this article. After the alleged incident, Frost-Winn and Tinsley slowly became friends again, and the violinist would shower him with gifts. But strange behavior eventually wound up taking place once again. Frost-Winn attached some text messages, some screen caps of text messages that he submitted to Consequence of Sound so we can actually see these things. When strange behavior continued, including asking for band member socks, Frost-Winn left powerless, like he had to shrug it off. Tinsley, after all, was his boss. At one point, Boyd texted Frost-Winn, "You in San Francisco?" with a question mark. "Don't mention to your bandmates, but I need your face. It's like the Hook. You're all good looking, but you have this magnetic attraction. Can you take some pics and vids of yourself and send to me? It's really hot when you wear dirty socks, by the way." A 5-second shot of your face garnered 15,000 views in a day. Started at 200. Your band needs your face. Dude, you're the bait. Our secret. And in parentheses, he wrote weapon. Frost-Winn responded with, "I'm in San Francisco, just got here. I can send you some photos. How's the tour?" Frost-Winn said, quote, "It all just kind of got chalked up to Boyd's just a weirdo. Very much just Stockholm Syndrome thing. You kind of feel bad for him. He has this deceiving niceness about him. He's doing all these things for us, for the band, so I think everybody just kind of wanted to ignore it because this opportunity we had." Although Frost-Winn had previously received late-night texts about coming to hang out at Tinsley's hotel, he said Tinsley began to harass him with explicit messages detailing a forthcoming photo shoot. Tinsley messaged Frost-Winn the following on March 18th, 2016. "Gonna take more pics of you," Tinsley said. "Let me know when the swelling is gone on your neck and is better. Would like to do it next week." I'm going to paraphrase through some of these here. But he essentially went on to say that he was the attractive member of the band, that he was doing inappropriate things while looking at photos of Frost-Winn. I cannot read this on the air. He described what he wants to do in the photo shoot. Jeans are dirty, shirt is dirty, but your face and hair are immaculate, angelic. You get the vibe? Question mark. Cannot say that on the air. You are the dirty, pretty boy of the band. I have to sexually exploit you as much as I can without looking like I'm doing it. He went on to describe what he was doing to himself once again at the time of the text message. Frost-Winn said, "I just tried to do something to laugh it off. I couldn't straight up ignore him because he's our boss. I wasn't the only person he was hitting on in this group, but he would make it like you're the most sexy person in the band. There's just something about you," Frost-Winn said. In 2016, Frost-Winn decided to leave the band. He and Santos were in Boyd's living room when Tinsley, out of nowhere, started talking about the time that they were in the recording studio and he did something inappropriate while touching him. This time he spoke about it in full clarity. Frost-Winn said that Boyd said, "The way you looked while you were sleeping, I couldn't control myself." At the moment, Frost-Winn said, "I knew he had lied about not being in the right state of mind, and coupled with all the things that had happened in between, I immediately realized I couldn't trust him." During the same conversation, Frost-Winn alleges that Tinsley referred to a 2016 incident where Frost-Winn wanted something to happen. Frost-Winn was blackout drunk after playing a recently opened speakeasy. Quote, "I don't think getting blackout drunk makes you gay," he says. "I especially can't trust this guy because it's a night I don't remember at all, and he's trying to convince me that I was making moves on him." Frost-Winn quit Crystal Garden, disenchanted, suicidal, and with writer's block. He temporarily moved back to the Bay Area, where he worked over 60 hours a week to avoid being alone with his thoughts. In retrospect, he was absolutely grooming me, Frost-Winn says. "I considered him like a brother, my family, especially after my mother passed. He was one of the positive role models in my life. I invested a lot into the relationship that was ultimately very bad for me. I first met him when I was homeless and 18 and new to experiencing the world. I felt very betrayed by the end of this." Why is this coming out now? Frost-Winn decided to seek legal counsel and has attempted to settle his assault and harassment claims against Tinsley out of court, first issuing a demand letter on February 2nd of this year. That is the same day that Boyd Tinsley sent out a tweet saying that he would be taking time from the Dave Matthews Band. Quote, I need to take a break from the band and touring to focus on my family and my health for a while. I will miss you guys and my brothers in the band, but I'm somewhat worn out and need to spend more time with my family and to bring more balance to my life. Thanks for your love. Peace and love. Tinsley's representatives replied asking for an extension and additional documentation after the claim was filed, but Frost-Winn was not claiming that Frost-Winn was not Tinsley's employee, but rather a session musician. Tinsley is married with two children. Excuse me. In an interview, and we had talked about this, prior to this all coming out, Dave Matthews addressed Boyd's departure from the band with Vulture saying, quote, I have a deep love for Boyd, and he has to deal with his stuff. In many ways, I'm sure it would have been a lot easier for him to just say, I'm good, let's play. But you can't just throw yourself away, your wellness away, because you play violin in a band. It doesn't make sense to do that. When reached for a comment in response to this story, a representative for Dave Matthews Band yesterday shared a similarly worded statement saying, quote, Boyd has been a member of the family since the band began, and we want him to focus on his health and get better. We support his decision to do this, and we're sending positive thoughts his way. According to People magazine, and this was just released a few short hours ago, a rep for the Dave Matthews Band said, quote, though Boyd is no longer a member of the band, we are shocked by these disturbing allegations, and we were not previously aware of them, end quote. So the band is taking the stance that they were not aware that these things were going on. Obviously, a lot of stuff comes to mind, and obviously people are going to interpret these actions very differently. And there's a lot of stuff to consider. Did the band know what was going on? Did these things occur? These are two accounts of people. There's obviously other members of the band. This gentleman is saying that other members in the band experienced these things. What do they have to say about this? You really can't assume too much and move too forward. But as we've seen in this era of the Me Too movement, when a lot of these things occur and people like Matt Lauer and all these people start to step down and get fired from their positions and there's no fight on their end, it's sad, but it's true. A lot of these things are true. I'm not saying that's the case in this. I'm going to wait and see what happens from here. I'm not saying I don't believe this kid. I'm not saying I believe him 1,000%. I'm saying this is what we know right now, and that is all we know. It breaks my heart that any of this was taking place, and if it was true, predatory behavior like this absolutely disgusts me. And again, it being the second time an accusation like this was being made is very disheartening. The fact that that Boyd's people were made known of Frost-Winn's intentions to settle this matter, and that was the same day he sent out that tweet, is also very disheartening. There's a lot to this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to this. We will let it play out and, of course, deliver you the news as we get it. But for right now, it's interesting to see the band respond one way yesterday and then hours later take a completely different approach, saying Boyd is no longer a member of the band. Because when somebody says I'm taking some time for the band, like, nobody really knows what that is. I mean, I speculated the other day when we were talking about Dave's interview that I don't know if he's ever coming back. Just judging by the way that Dave sounded, it didn't sound good to me. And nobody really knew what it was. Interestingly, some people had commented to me online after that story went out on our blog page that this is what it was. But I said at the time, look, it's one person who was fired and who was accused of stealing $9 million from Boyd that was saying this, and wasn't saying it was done to him, but saying that Boyd was doing it to other people. A judge threw that out. You know, there's a lot of doubt that was cast in that person. Now it's two people. And the second person is saying that there's more people. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I honestly feel bad for his family throughout times like this. I always think about what the wife and kids are thinking, and that has got to be incredibly difficult. Also, very disappointing for the band members. You know, I don't know the band closely whatsoever, but from what I understand, their touring habits, they all just go their separate ways after the shows. They don't spend a lot of time with each other anymore outside of the time they spend together on stage. They've been saying that for years. So the fact that they didn't know this was happening, I don't really know. I don't really know. But I can tell you that overall, the whole entire thing is disappointing as a fan. So that's the absolute latest. The band clearly distancing themselves in their latest statement. Though Boyd is no longer a member of the band, we are shocked by these disturbing allegations, and we were not previously aware of them. I'm sure we'll hear from more. It's going to be fairly unavoidable with the band releasing a new album in just a few short weeks. And like I said, if anything else happens in this story, we'll update you for sure.